Beirut, Lebanon, June 8, 2006. American University's graduation hall swells with 2,000 voices celebrating achievement. Among the proud families sits Colonel Hassan Fadel, a Hezbollah commander who never appears in public. He's made an exception today for his daughter's law school graduation. 3 men sit 15 meters away, dressed as university faculty. The applause rises. They move in perfect synchronization. Within seconds, Fadel collapses. The assassins walk out through faculty exits as his bodyguards fire wildly at rooftops. This is Operation Sapphire Dagger, the assassination that proved nowhere was safe. Hassan Fadel was born in southern Lebanon in 1963. During a period when the region existed in permanent tension between local militias, Palestinian refugees, and Israeli military incursions. His childhood was defined by a single event. In 1978, Israeli forces launched Operation Litani, occupying his village for 3 months. Fadel, then 15, watched his uncle executed at a checkpoint for carrying what soldiers claimed was contraband. It was medical supplies. By age 19, Fadel had joined the nascent Hezbollah movement, demonstrating tactical acumen that separated him from ideological recruits who prioritized martyrdom over strategic value. The capability that made Fadel dangerous was his understanding of hybrid warfare before Western militaries had terminology for it. Associates described him as methodical, never impulsive. He integrated guerrilla tactics with conventional military doctrine, creating defensive networks in southern Lebanon that forced Israeli forces into asymmetric engagements, where technological superiority meant less. By 2003, Fadel commanded Hezbollah's southern sector, a zone covering approximately 40 kilometers of Lebanese territory bordering Israel. This position made him responsible for weapons smuggling routes, rocket deployment locations, and coordination with Syrian intelligence officers who supplied advanced anti-tank systems. His operational signature was compartmentalization. Cells under his command operated independently, knowing only their specific mission parameters. Intelligence services had tracked Fadel for 7 years. Mossad maintained a classified file designated Target Profile Sierra 73, updated weekly with movement patterns, communication intercepts, and family information. By April 2006, Israeli intelligence concluded Fadel represented a critical level threat. The assessment was straightforward. Hezbollah was stockpiling Iranian-supplied Kornet anti-tank missiles in positions Fadel controlled. These weapons could neutralize Israeli Merkava tanks, eliminating Israel's primary tactical advantage in ground operations. War planners in Tel Aviv projected that any future conflict with Hezbollah would result in significantly higher Israeli casualties if Fadel's command structure remained intact. The authorization to eliminate Fadel came in May 2006. Standard doctrine called this a decapitation strike, targeting leadership to create operational paralysis. Mossad called this the precision doctrine. The logic was straightforward. Remove key commanders before major conflict begins, and the enemy's coordination collapses when violence actually erupts. The operation fit this framework perfectly. Fadel's elimination would disrupt Southern Command, scatter weapons networks, and demonstrate to Hezbollah's leadership that operational security was an illusion. The obstacles were substantial. First, Fadel's movement patterns were unpredictable and irregular. He never slept in the same location more than 2 consecutive nights. Electronic communication was minimal. He relied on human couriers who were rotated frequently. Second, southern Lebanon was hostile territory, where Mossad had limited freedom of movement. The population was sympathetic to Hezbollah, and any suspicious behavior would be reported immediately. Third, Fadel maintained a professional security detail trained by Iranian Revolutionary Guard advisors. These bodyguards enforced protocols that kept Fadel away from public spaces, open streets, and any location that couldn't be secured in advance. Despite these challenges, planners identified a vulnerability in March 2006. Signals intelligence intercepted a conversation between Fadel's wife and her sister, discussing their daughter Amira's upcoming graduation from American University of Beirut's law school. The ceremony was scheduled for June 8th. Fadel's wife mentioned that Hassan was determined to attend despite the risks. Analysts flagged this immediately. A public ceremony with 2,000 attendees offered multiple approach vectors, escape routes, and the chaos necessary for operational concealment. Within 14 days, all elements would be in position. But first, the team needed to solve a problem: how to place armed operatives inside a venue with metal detectors and Hezbollah counter-surveillance units scanning for exactly this kind of infiltration. The human element emerged during mission planning. Intelligence intercepts from May 24, 2006, captured Fadel speaking with his daughter by phone. She asked if he would attend. Fadel responded, "I've missed too much already. I'll be there." Analysts noted nothing operationally relevant in the call's content. The conversation revealed a father's guilt about absences caused by underground work, birthday parties missed, school events skipped, years of family life sacrificed to organizational security. When Fadel's security chief recommended against attending the graduation, citing the exposure risk, Fadel overruled him. The human cost of that decision would be calculated in seconds, not years. For the operatives selected, the psychological burden began during legend construction. The team leader, designated Agent Aleph in mission documentation, would assume the identity of Dr. Michael Renard, a visiting professor from the Sorbonne specializing in Middle Eastern legal frameworks. During preparation, Aleph spent 6 weeks building the Renard legend, memorizing publications, establishing an academic email trail, even presenting at a small conference in Amman to create verifiable history. Intelligence psychologists call this legend drift, the psychological blurring when false identity feels more real than the original. During a training exercise, Aleph automatically introduced himself as Renard to a Mossad supervisor. The incident was noted in his file. Post-operation psychological assessment would classify him as experiencing moderate dissociative symptoms. But the mission continued. The assassination was scheduled for June 8th, regardless of internal conflicts. By June 2, 2006, the operation entered its execution phase. Amira Fadel's graduation ceremony was confirmed for 1,400 hours on June 8th at American University's Assembly Hall. The window was 72 hours for final positioning and 48 hours for contingency planning if Fadel's attendance was canceled. The countdown had begun. The infrastructure required for Operation Sapphire Dagger was compartmentalized across 3 operational tiers. Tier 1 focused on identity documentation. The 3 operatives, designated Aleph, Bet, and Gimel in mission files, required academic credentials that would survive both administrative scrutiny and spontaneous professional conversation. Mossad's documentation specialists created complete academic histories. Dr. Michael Renard from Sorbonne, Dr. James Whitaker from Oxford's Faculty of Law, and Dr. Elena Kovac from Charles University in Prague. Each legend included published articles planted in obscure academic journals 6 months prior, email accounts with years of backdated correspondence, and even photographs inserted into university archive databases showing the professors at various conferences. The directive authorizing this documentation was classified under Operation Directive MEM 74 Alpha. Equipment selection prioritized silence and concealment. Each operative carried a modified Beretta 92 FS pistol fitted with custom suppressors manufactured by Israeli military industries. The suppressors, designated Model IMI SR22, reduced muzzle report to approximately 120 decibels, roughly equivalent to a door slamming in an adjacent room. At 15 meters in a venue filled with 2,000 people applauding and an orchestra playing, the sound would be indistinguishable from ambient noise. Ammunition was subsonic 9mm rounds designed to fragment on impact, ensuring lethality while minimizing the risk of through-and-through wounds that might endanger bystanders. Communication systems relied on a one-way protocol. Operatives received updates via encrypted SMS messages that appeared as routine text exchanges about academic scheduling. The system, called temporal sequencing in internal documentation, allowed command to update timing without requiring operatives to respond, eliminating the risk of intercepted transmissions revealing operational activity. Extraction routes were mapped using commercial GPS data cross-referenced with real-time traffic patterns. Primary exfiltration would proceed north through Hamra Street toward a safe house in the Christian quarter of Achrafiyeh. Secondary routes extended east toward the Beirut-Damascus highway. Tertiary extraction, if the primary and secondary routes were compromised, involved a coastal approach with a cigarette boat positioned off Ramlet al-Baida beach. The team structure maintained operational compartmentalization. Aleph served as team leader and primary shooter. Bet functioned as secondary shooter and surveillance specialist. Gimel handled external security and extraction coordination. None of the operatives knew the identities of the support personnel, the safe house operators, the traffic police providing corridor security, or the signals intelligence team monitoring Hezbollah radio frequencies for signs of operational compromise. Each operative knew only their specific function to prevent catastrophic intelligence loss if captured. If Hezbollah detained Aleph and extracted information under interrogation, he could compromise only 2 other operatives, not the entire support network spanning Beirut. The planning consumed 47 days. By May 29, 2006, all operatives had entered Lebanon through separate routes. Aleph via commercial flight from Paris, Bet through the Damascus airport with a forged British passport, Gimel by vehicle through the Turkish-Syrian border using Czech documentation. The team had 9 days before execution. The pressure of waiting in hostile territory, maintaining false identities while Hezbollah counterintelligence units actively searched for Israeli operatives, was what handlers called operational compression, the psychological toll of sustained deception in an environment where discovery meant torture and death. June 3, 2006. At 1100 hours, Aleph made first contact with American University's Faculty of Law Administration. Using the Renard identity, he presented credentials as a visiting scholar interested in attending the graduation ceremony to observe Lebanese legal education achievements. The faculty coordinator, Dr. Nadia Hamidi, welcomed the interest. Academic exchanges with European institutions were considered prestigious. She provided Aleph with a faculty guest pass and seating assignment in Section B, reserved for visiting professors and distinguished guests. The simplicity of access was almost disappointing. Decades of Mossad operations had conditioned planners to expect elaborate infiltration sequences, but the academic world's openness to international cooperation created a vulnerability that intelligence agencies could exploit with minimal effort. Bet and Gimel followed the same protocol over the next 48 hours. By June 5th, 3 operatives held valid faculty guest passes and confirmed seating assignments. The positioning was nearly perfect. Section B was located along the western wall of Assembly Hall, approximately 15 meters from the family seating area where Hassan Fadel would sit. The geometry provided clear sight lines, while the elevated faculty section created a downward firing angle that reduced the risk of missed shots traveling into the crowd beyond the target. Over the next 72 hours, the operatives established presence. They attended 2 preliminary academic events, a law symposium on June 6th and a faculty reception on June 7th. The goal was normalizing their faces, so security personnel and faculty members would recognize them as legitimate guests, rather than last-minute arrivals who might trigger suspicion. During the June 7 reception, a complication emerged. Dr. Hamidi introduced Aleph to another visiting professor, Dr. Rashid Karami from Cairo University. Karami had actually attended a conference at the Sorbonne in 2004 and claimed to remember seeing Renard there. Aleph maintained composure, redirecting the conversation toward Egyptian legal reforms, a topic where Karami's expertise exceeded his own, making Karami eager to demonstrate knowledge rather than probe Renard's background. The interaction lasted 11 minutes. Aleph's heart rate, monitored via biometric sensors tracked by the support team, peaked at 138 beats per minute. Trained operatives typically maintain rates below 110 during high-stress social engineering. The incident was noted as a near compromise. By June 7, 2006, confirmation arrived through signals intelligence. Hezbollah radio traffic indicated Hassan Fadel's security detail was conducting advanced reconnaissance at American University. The team intercepted communications discussing parking arrangements and exit routes. Fadel's attendance was certain. The operation was green-lit for execution. 21 hours remained. June 8, 2006. At 0630 hours, the operatives conducted final equipment checks in separate safe houses across Beirut. Weapons were test-fired into ballistic gel blocks to confirm suppressor function and ammunition performance. The gel tests showed consistent fragmentation patterns. Each round created a wound cavity approximately 8 centimeters in diameter, ensuring rapid incapacitation. Communication devices were verified. Extraction teams confirmed vehicle positioning. At 0900 hours, Aleph sent a single-word encrypted message to command. Proceeding. The ceremony began at 1400 hours. 2,000 graduates filled the hall wearing black robes and caps. Families occupied the ground-level seating sections. Faculty and distinguished guests sat in elevated sections along the perimeter. An orchestra played Elgar's Pomp and Circumstance as the processional began. The operatives arrived separately between 1330 and 1345 hours, entering through different entrances to avoid appearing as a coordinated group. Aleph took his seat in Section B, Row 4, Seat 12. Bet sat 3 rows behind in Row 7, Seat 9. Gimel positioned himself at the section's edge in Row 5, Seat 1, providing the clearest exit access. From these positions, they had overlapping fields of fire on the family seating area where Fadel would sit. The redundancy ensured mission success, even if one operative's shot failed to achieve immediate incapacitation. At 1423 hours, Hassan Fadel entered Assembly Hall. He wore a dark suit, no traditional religious attire, maintaining the appearance of a secular professional rather than a militant commander. His security detail, 4 men in civilian clothes, surrounded him but maintained distance to avoid drawing attention. Fadel's wife and 2 younger children accompanied him. They took seats in Section F, Row 3. The geometry was perfect. Fadel sat in the aisle seat, providing an unobstructed firing line from the operatives' positions 15 meters away. What Fadel didn't know was that his bodyguard's attention was focused outward, scanning the audience for suspicious individuals approaching from the crowd. Standard Hezbollah security doctrine assumed threats would come from ground level. A knife attack, a suicide bomber, perhaps a concealed firearm carried by someone posing as a civilian attendee. The protocol didn't account for elevated firing positions from credentialed faculty sections where security screening had already verified legitimacy. The ceremony proceeded. University President Dr. Rami Khoury delivered welcoming remarks. The dean of the law school discussed the graduating class's achievements. At 1500 hours, the diploma presentations began. Graduates approached the stage alphabetically. The crowd applauded each name. The orchestra played between clusters of students. Photographers from local media outlets circulated, capturing family celebrations. The ambient noise level fluctuated between 85 and 95 decibels, loud enough to mask suppressed gunfire, but not so loud that sudden silence would create temporal disorientation for the operatives. 15 meters away, Fadel's security team maintained vigilance, but their focus remained fragmented across 2,000 potential threats. They couldn't watch everyone simultaneously. The statistical impossibility of preventing an attack in such an environment was something intelligence agencies understood, but security personnel struggled to accept. Protection details relied on deterrence, the assumption that the difficulty of executing an attack in such a public venue outweighed the value of the target. That assumption was about to be tested. At 1537 hours, Amira Fadel's name was called. She walked across the stage, accepted her diploma, and posed for photographs. The audience applauded. Hassan Fadel stood clapping loudly, rare smile visible on his face. His wife held his arm. For approximately 20 seconds, Fadel's attention was completely focused on his daughter. His bodyguards watched the crowd, but not the elevated faculty sections behind them. The vulnerability window had opened. Aleph drew his weapon from a hollowed academic journal. Bet and Gimel followed the same motion simultaneously. The suppressed pistols cleared concealment. The operatives acquired their sight pictures. Fadel's head centered in each weapon's iron sights. The method about to be used was called synchronized fire in tactical doctrine. Multiple shooters firing at the same target within milliseconds of each other to ensure instant incapacitation and prevent any possibility of the target reacting or moving to cover. The applause peaked as another graduate's name was announced. 3 suppressed shots fired in a half-second sequence. The first round struck Fadel above his right ear. The second hit his temple. The third entered the back of his skull as he began to collapse forward. The fragmentation rounds created immediate, catastrophic brain trauma. Fadel's body dropped. Total time from weapon draw to target collapse, 2.4 seconds. His wife screamed. The bodyguard spun, weapons appearing from concealed holsters. But they didn't immediately identify the threat origin. The suppressed shots, masked by applause and orchestra music, left no acoustic signature pointing toward the faculty section. The bodyguard's training directed them to assume rooftop snipers or long-range fire. They began shooting at windows and elevated positions outside the hall. Panic spread through the crowd. Graduates dropped to the floor. Families scrambled for exits. Media photographers thought the gunfire was part of a militant attack and focused cameras on the bodyguards, not the 3 professors calmly standing and walking toward faculty exits. Aleph, Bet, and Gimel moved with practiced calm. They holstered weapons inside their jackets and walked toward the western exit designated for faculty evacuation. Security personnel were focused on the main hall chaos, not on professors evacuating according to emergency protocols. The operatives exited into a service corridor. At 1540 hours, 3 minutes after the shooting, they reached the faculty parking area where 2 vehicles waited, a Honda Accord and a Toyota Camry, both with diplomatic plates registered to the French and Czech embassies. The drivers were Lebanese traffic police officers recruited by Mossad through financial leverage. gambling debts converted into operational assets. They drove north through Hamra Street as planned. Hezbollah radio traffic, monitored by the signals intelligence team, indicated confusion about the attack. Initial reports suggested a suicide bomber, then shifted to speculation about internal Hezbollah conflicts. Nobody mentioned foreign operatives or Israeli involvement. The misdirection was succeeding. Within 90 minutes, the vehicles reached a safe house in Ashrafiyah. The operatives transferred to a commercial truck carrying furniture exports. The truck crossed into Syria at Masnaya border crossing at 1830 hours. Syrian border guards, paid through intermediaries to ignore certain shipments, waved the truck through without inspection. By 2300 hours, the operatives were across the Syrian-Israeli border at the Golan Heights, extracted by IDF units operating in the demilitarized zone. Total time from assassination to Israeli-controlled territory: 7 hours, 23 minutes. By 1700 hours, Lebanese security forces understood that Hassan Fadel had been assassinated. Initial confusion about the attack method delayed response. Bodyguards insisted the shots came from outside the building, leading investigators to examine windows and roof lines for sniper positions. No evidence was found. Forensic analysis of the head wounds revealed close range fire, forcing a reassessment. Security footage from Assembly Hall showed 3 men in faculty section rising and exiting during the chaos, but their faces were partially obscured by angle and crowd movement. Every lead ended in diplomatic dead ends. The French and Czech embassies confirmed that Dr. Renard, Dr. Whitaker, and Dr. Kovac had attended the ceremony as invited guests. But subsequent investigation revealed these identities were completely fabricated, with no corresponding individuals at the claimed universities. Hezbollah issued a statement at 2100 hours describing Fadel's death as a martyrdom operation by Zionist criminals. The wording was careful, acknowledging the assassination without admitting the security failure it represented. Israeli officials maintained complete silence on the matter, neither confirming nor denying involvement. The denials were transparent to those in the intelligence community who understood Israeli operational patterns, but transparency wasn't the point. Official ambiguity prevented diplomatic escalation while the message to Hezbollah was unmistakable. Leadership was not protected, even in public spaces surrounded by security. The tactical objective was accomplished. Hassan Fadel's elimination created immediate operational disruption in Hezbollah's southern command. Intelligence intercepts over the following weeks showed subordinate commanders struggling to coordinate weapons distribution and defensive preparations. Strategic gains included preventing Fadel from implementing planned anti-tank ambush positions that would have significantly increased Israeli casualties when war erupted 5 weeks later in July 2006. Secondary benefits included demonstrating to Hezbollah's Iranian sponsors that their investments in Lebanese militant infrastructure remained vulnerable to Israeli targeting. The costs were substantial in multiple domains. Diplomatically, relations with Lebanon deteriorated further, though they were already minimal given the country's permanent state of hostility. European governments privately protested Israel's use of forged academic credentials from their institutions, arguing it undermined legitimate academic exchange and created suspicion around visiting scholars throughout the Middle East. Operationally, the operation revealed certain tradecraft elements, particularly the use of suppressed weapons in crowded venues and the exploitation of academic conferences for infiltration, forcing Mossad to adapt future methodologies as hostile intelligence services updated their countermeasures. The human consequences were specific and irreversible. For Amira Fadel, her law school graduation became a moment of trauma rather than achievement. Lebanese media reported that she withdrew from public life entirely, abandoning legal practice. For Fadel's wife and younger children, the assassination in their presence created psychological damage that extended beyond immediate grief. For the operatives, post-mission psychological evaluations documented symptoms consistent with moral injury. The cognitive dissonance created when actions necessary for mission success conflicted with personal ethical frameworks. Agent Aleph required 6 months of psychological treatment before being cleared for operational duty again. Israeli intelligence assessment concluded that the strategic benefits outweighed the costs. Fadel's elimination degraded Hezbollah's military coordination during the 2006 Lebanon War, contributing to Israeli tactical successes in the conflict's opening phase. Whether this calculation proved correct depends on perspective. Israeli casualties during the war totaled 121 soldiers and 44 civilians, numbers that military analysts suggested would have been higher if Fadel's defensive networks had remained under his command. Hezbollah's assessment differed. The organization's leadership viewed the assassination as evidence that conventional security measures were insufficient, leading to enhanced protection protocols and deeper operational compartmentalization that made subsequent Israeli targeting more difficult. The operation's legacy within intelligence communities was significant. Operation Sapphire Dagger became a case study in targeted elimination doctrine, taught at intelligence training facilities as an example of precision, timing, and exploitation of predictable human behavior. The methodology, identifying rare vulnerability windows, leveraging institutional trust through forged credentials, and executing in high-density public spaces where security assumes safety in numbers, influenced how intelligence agencies approached high-value target operations for the next decade. The moral calculation remains contested. Was Hassan Fadel a legitimate military target or a father attending his daughter's graduation? Perspective A argues that Fadel's operational role in coordinating attacks against Israeli, military and civilian targets, his command of weapons systems designed to kill, and his position in Hezbollah's military hierarchy made him indistinguishable from any uniformed military commander who would be targeted during armed conflict. The fact that he attended a civilian ceremony while maintaining active command responsibility didn't transform him into a protected civilian under the laws of war. Perspective B argues that executing anyone in front of their family, regardless of their military role, represents a fundamental violation of human dignity that undermines the moral legitimacy of intelligence operations. The presence of Fadel's wife and children at the moment of his death, the psychological trauma inflicted on his daughter during what should have been a celebration of her achievement, and the message sent to other families that no moment of normalcy is truly safe. These consequences extend beyond strategic calculation into territory where ends justify means logic breaks down. The answer reveals more about your worldview than about Hassan Fadel. If you believe state security justifies eliminating threats regardless of context, Sapphire Dagger represents successful operational planning. If you believe some boundaries should remain inviolable even in asymmetric conflict, the operation crossed a line that no strategic benefit can excuse. What's your take on this specific question? Does the presence of family members at the moment of an assassination change its moral status? Or does a combatant's military role follow them everywhere, making all locations legitimate engagement zones? Drop your perspective in the comments. If this story made you reconsider the hidden costs of intelligence operations that official histories never acknowledge, hit that like button and share this with someone who thinks they understand how modern conflicts actually work.